أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي اللهم فقهنا في الدين ربي يسر ولا تعسر وتمم بالخير وبك نستعين يا عزيز يا غفار. My dear sisters, I hope all of you are doing well and your families are doing well. So my dear sisters, we are together again back over here with our Tuesday Tafseer class. And as you know that from on site we have gone online with the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is our second class when it comes to being online, and we are on juz number 2, and today we will start with verses number 172 and we will go up to verses number 182. Many important topics we will be discussing in today's 10 verses. We will be discussing the main injunctions about what is the meaning of bir, what is the meaning of qisas, what is the meaning of wasiya, and these important topics will be talked about in today's class, inshallah. So just a little recap and connecting the verses that we have been doing together and making an understanding of the whole gist over here. So from the beginning of the Suratul Baqara to this point, the Surah Al-Baqarah is reaching its midway point. So far, as you guys know, that the message was addressed to the people who have been denying the truth that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent with Prophet Mohammed sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and up to this point that truth has been established because it was important that the truth of Quran to be established. So in that context, many things were established, and we talked about that three groups of people: the believers, the non-believers, and the hypocrites. And then after that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala followed that up with the call of Tawheed, followed by the belief in the prophethood of Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. After that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala started talking about the favors and the blessings He has showered upon the children of Ibrahim alayhi salam, from the ayahs number 124, wa izibtala Ibrahim rabbuhu. From that point on, we talked about the favors and blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon the progeny of Ibrahim alayhi salam. After that, the issue of tahwilul qibla, or the changing of the qibla, started, because the change of the qibla was actually the establishment of a new ummah, and the characteristics of the new ummah were talked about, and this passage came to conclusion with the verse number 158, when we talked about Safa and Marwa as being the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. After that, again, the affirmation of Allah's oneness was followed, and also the affirmation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was followed, and with the refutation of the shirk and its inherence. Then again, the approach was up till that point, the approach was to warn the deniers of the truth. And now, the verses that follow now are going to be now about the primary principles that the Sharia of the new Muslim Ummah is going to be. So up until ayahs number 167, the basic fundamental principles, the truth of the Quran has been established. And now, as you will see, that today we will talk about some of the verses of the Quran that will now talk about some of the related issues that will come and are important to those fundamental principles of the Quran. And later on, starting from ayah number 177, we will go into deep discussion of bir meaning the righteousness, what it really means, what is the inward and outward of that, and this subject will go till the end of Suratul Baqarah. Okay, so today inshallah we will start with verses number 172. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking to the believers. Ya ayyuhallazina amanu qulu min tayyibati ma razaqnakum. O you who believe in the oneness of Allah, eat of the lawful things that we have provided you with, and be grateful to Allah. So my dear sisters, in the previous verses, which were verses number 168, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was talking to the mushrikun. Ya ayyuhan nas qulu min tayyibat. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was first of all talking to the mushrikun that do not make those things haram which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made halal. And now over here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking to the believers that they should not dwell into things that making those things that are halal as haram. So earlier, the aim was to correct the error made by the mushrikun when they made unlawful what was good and permissible. Now, is in the present verse, the believers are being warned against falling into the same error. So, as an injunction to this, they are reminded of Allah's blessings and are taught to be grateful to Him. So, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu kulu min tayyibati ma razaqnakum washkuru lillah. And also the objective of this is not to just eat the halal and to avoid haram, but the objective of this is to be thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So my dear sisters, before we go into the understanding of these verses, I want us to establish some basic truths regarding, that will help us in understanding the verses that we're going to talk about today. So, one thing that we need to understand is that now the new ummah is raised over here, and the progress of the people from now on, after the final revelation has come, the progress or free growth of the people cannot happen if people are still falling into misconceptions and superstitions, which was a very much part of that society. People had superstitions, had misconceptions which were not from the truth, and they had branded certain animals, they had made certain animals haram by themselves, they had made certain things halal by themselves. All of that was misconception, and none of that was based on the truth. But for the progress of the new people, after progress of the people after the new revelation or the final revelation has come, certain things had to be understood. So first of all, my dear sisters, let's understand. In the first place, it was announced by the Quran that it was open to man to make use free of restrictions of all the good things of life provided on the earth. Meaningless or self-imposed restrictions were clearly Satan inspired. As you know that we discussed about this in the previous verses where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us, don't follow the footsteps of shaitan. Secondly, one principle that we need to keep in mind while we are trying to understand these verses of the Quran, incidentally, the Quran draws attention to the truth and the peculiarity or the truth that the way of faith was the way of reason and insight. So from another thing that we learned from these verses, that the way of the truth is the way of reason and insight, and the way of the kufr is the way of blind imitation. My dear sisters, in present times, one of the kufr that is very much prevalent is atheism. And if you look at the claims of the atheism, you will notice few things over there, that they say that they are basing their claims on reason and logic, but once you start to understand their claims, you understand that none of that is based upon reason and logic. Number one thing, my dear sisters, with atheism, if people deny God, and if you ask them what is God, they won't be. Many of the atheists that I have been talking with, they would not be able to define that for us. So for first of all, reasonably and logically, if we want to deny something, we should be able, first of all, we should know what it is that we are denying. So if we do not even know that what we are denying, then that's not reasonable. Secondly, if I go into this brief, this scenario in front of you, for example, if you ask a doctor why our blood is red, what would be the answer? If you ask any doctor why the blood is red, the answer would probably be because your blood contains millions of little discs which are red, and this is why the blood is of that color. But then you again ask, yes, but why are these discs red? Then the answer will be because they contain a substance called hemoglobin, which when it absorbs oxygen from the lungs becomes bright red. This is why the blood in the arteries is scarlet red, because it is full of oxygen, and when the blood gives off that oxygen to different organs, it becomes kind of brownish. Again, but why is the blood red in color, right? So then the answer can be because the corpuscles in the blood are red. But then you can ask, where are these red corpuscles come from? The answer can be they are made in the spleen. That's marvelous. The answer can be, but tell me, how is it that the blood, the red corpuscles, the spleen, and the 1,000 other organs are so organized into one coherent whole, working together so perfectly that I can breathe, run, speak, and live. Now, what is the answer to that? Yes, science has given us this ocean of knowledge that we know how things work, but why they are like that? So the answer will be then, because it's nature. Then we are kind of saying that nature is interplay of blind physical and chemical forces that come together and then go towards a definite goal. Is this logical? Is this reasonable? That nature is, it is because the nature is saying so. Then is nature a blind interplay of physical and chemical forces that are working together in a coherent whole and going towards a definite end? Is that what it is? So my dear sisters, again, you can understand by this that, do these blind forces act as if they are pursuing a definite end, which is, my sister, you can understand this is not the answer. So this tells us how, but it doesn't tell us why. For the science to replace religion and for the kufr to replace the faith, it has to come up with absolute and concrete answers, which can never be the truth. It is the religion that gives us the concrete and the absolute answers. So the way of the faith is the way of reason and logic, and the way of the kufr is a way of blind imitation. So yes, the good thing is we're all for it. Science has given us a vast storehouse of knowledge of how things work, but why are they the way they are? These absolute answers can only come from the religion, and this is what is logical and this is what is reasonable. Like, the famous saying, yes, the Darwinian theory can tell us the survival of the fittest. Yes, the survival of the fittest, the theory explains that, but it does not explain the arrival of the fittest, and that's more important. Where does it come from? So again, one thing that we need to keep in mind, number one, is that what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made haram, only that is haram, and other than that, everything else is halal. Secondly, the way of the Quran, the way of the faith is the way of reason and logic, and the way of kufr is the way of blind imitation. Okay. Then third that we have to understand is the observance of number of restrictions by the people of the book in the matter of food was due to the fact that the direction given in the book and the practice of its early followers had fallen into neglect. Why they were doing that? Because they had rejected or they had forgotten the message that had been brought to them previously. Okay, so over here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking to us, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu, eat from that which is, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu, eat of the lawful things that we have provided you with, and be grateful to Allah. It is indeed He whom you worship. And then after that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us what are the four things that He is making haram over here for us. So innama harrama, so this particle, this harf innama is is telling us that these are the things. Innama harrama is a restrictive harf, is a restrictive particle that tells us that these following things are made haram to us. So now the first thing that is made haram over here is maita. So what is maita? Is a dead animal. The second thing is al-dam. So dam is the blood. Then lahmul khinzir, meaning the meat of the swine. And then an animal over the wama uhilla bihi li ghayrillah, upon an animal on which the name of anyone other than Allah has been taken. So these are the four things over here, and now we will go into a detail of explaining what each and every one of them means. So first of all, and my dear sisters, you can follow your notes along. Your notes were posted in the group last week. I posted that. So inshallah you can follow those along. I have mentioned certain ahadith in that notes, which if I get time over here, I will read from your notes too. But other than that, you can read your notes on your own. So you can, because you can have more information, my dear sisters, just by listening. You will not gain much, but after the class, at least 1 hour a week you have to put in there, so you go through the notes and read the notes, and maybe bring some questions in the next class if you can and if you want. So number one, what is Maita? What is the dead animal? The dead animal is known in English as carrion or carcass. In Islamic terminology, it means an animal. So Maita in Islamic terminology means an animal not slaughtered in accordance with the requirement of the Sharia. Now that's important to understand. We have certain requirements in the Sharia to slaughter an animal, and inshallah we can go into more detail of that, the fiqh of slaughtering an animal, what is the right way to do, if it is not the right way to do. Inshallah, we can do a more detailed program on that. But Maita, according to Islamic terminology, is an animal which is not slaughtered in the way that is prescribed by the Sharia. So if it dies on its own death without having been slaughtered, or is killed by choking or aggressive hitting, it falls under the category of dead. So any meat that dies, any animal that dies on its own, or it is slaughtered in a way by hitting, by electrifying, by blowing on their head, anything that is falls into the category of Maita or dead. But another thing that we understand from here is, my dear sisters, is that that this is for the animals that are on the land. But when it comes to the sea, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has allowed us in the sea and the eating of those. So for example, over here I would like to say, slaughtering sea life is not necessary as a condition, it is permissible even without it. So but when it comes to the sea animals, the fish and the likes of that, there is no slaughtering. So this is, we are talking about the animals of that are eaten as for meat over here. There is a hadith that the Prophet ﷺ have said, two things dead have been made lawful for you, the fish and the locust, and two forms of blood have been made lawful for us, the liver and the spleen, and we will talk about this more. So over here, two things that have been made lawful for us that does not require slaughtering and therefore does not fall into the category of Maita are called a fish and the locust, and we will talk about the liver and the spleen when it comes to talking about the blood. So let me also look into your notes that some of the things that I have put over there. So my dear sisters, why it is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has asked us to eat of the pure things? Because my dear sisters, eating of the pure things, what happens, the effect of eating halal and haram, let's discuss that. The reason is that the act of eating haram promotes evil instincts. So the act of eating haram promotes evil instincts, kills the taste of ibadah, and number three, and makes the prayers ineffective. In contrast, eating halal generates inner light, creates a distaste for evil deeds, and leads towards high morals, and create a state in which the heart welcomes ibadah and finds the very thought of sin sickening. So there is a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that he said, there are many people tired and distressed who stretch their hands in prayer before Allah, calling, O Lord, yet haram is that what they eat, haram is that what they drink, and haram is that what they wear. How then under these conditions should they hope to have their prayers answered? Another verse in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala even talked to the prophets and says, Ya ayyuhar rusulu kulu minat tayyibati wa'amalu salihan. O messengers, eat of the good things and do the righteous deeds. So this tells us that this is the injunction that eating halal, wearing halal, earning halal, all of that is so important in order to be the abd of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and not being careful of that takes us to be a transgressor. Okay. Now my dear sisters, going on a little bit of a tangent over here, because we are discussing about the slaughtering of the animals. There is this topic that comes up very frequently in the Western media and the Western academia, and topics about the cruelty to animals. When it comes to Islamic way of slaughtering, there are many people who would say, oh, this is cruelty to animals, eating animals is cruel, and so and so. And in the present that we are going through this epidemic or pandemic of coronavirus, and one thing that has come to the surface in all of that is the wet markets and the cruelty to animals over there. So before I go into this, the discussion of the halal meat and cruelty to animals and all of that, we should talk about this. That one thing I was finding out, and I was looking at on internet and many other reports that were coming from different academic journals, was that where does this virus come from? And the likes of this virus, in maybe a few years back, there was another virus by the name of SARS that appeared on the surface. So one thing that is coming to the knowledge of the people is the wet markets that are around the world, especially in Asia, where these markets are. And what happens in those wet markets? Usually these markets are selling fish, fruits and vegetables, but there are many markets also called wet markets where wild animals are being sold. So what happens is, and this is really the cruelty to animals that is being now talked about. So what happens in these wet markets is that animals from all over the world, wild animals, are taken from their homes, from the systems that they are used to, and they're put into these markets together. And these animals, and these are wild animals, they do not live like that in their own native environment. And what happens is that, and if you look at the documentaries that are being created about these wet markets, these animals, they are all, crammed together in one small room, very humid, and the temperature is usually hot over there, and these animals are crammed together. And what happens is, because of the whole environment, the animals are scared, they're getting sick, so their immune system is kind of compromised at that point. And what happens at this point is, there are different viruses that are carried by these animals are jumping from one another. And because the immune system of these animals are compromised at this point, these viruses get a chance to acquire on new genetic codes, because they're able to prosper in those environments where the animals are together and they are not supposed to be like that, and they're crammed together in cages, they're not being treated right because of being scared and because of being sick. The immune system of these animals are being compromised, and this gives the chance to virus to mutate and get a very healthy environment to exchange the genetic codes and things like that. And this virus came from that. The coronavirus is a product of those things. So those wet markets and the way the animals are being treated over there is a problem, is one of the sources where this is coming from. And when these animals are like that, and this kind of virus is kind of flourishing in that environment, and through because these are called zoonotics. These viruses are called zoonotics because they're coming to us from the animals. Zoonotics is from zoo or zoology. And the one thing that you can see is, when these animals are handled by human beings, then, and they have already mutated, they're already becoming more adaptable. Now they're jumping from animals to humans, and this is where this virus is now coming from. And yes, it is with the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We believe it as Muslims, but we also would know what are the causes of that, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made this world a world of cause and effect. So as Muslims, we also go into the knowledge of these things, and we should look at that. So if you get a chance, look at the documentaries. There's a program by 60 Minutes, if you're familiar with that. I recently saw a documentary with them on wet markets and what happens over there. So go into that. So over here, while we are talking about the slaughtering of animals, and this issue always comes up, it is animal rights issue, things like that. But if you go into the details of these things, you will see that the injunctions of the Prophet ﷺ and the injunctions of the Sharia on how these animals should be kept, and what should be the environment for the slaughtering of these animals, and how the way that they're slaughtered, they feel minimum to no pain at all. And then again, the way these animals should be reared, the way these animals should be kept, and if you look at the injunctions of the Sharia, I will not go into details of that. Inshallah, we can do a separate program on all of this. But you will see, if you go into the injunctions of that, you will see Islam not only takes care of their physical health, but also takes care of the mental health of the animals. Few things that I wanted to share over here with you. There's a book that is available even on Kindle and internet if you want to go and read into more detail about that, about the animal welfare in Islam. And there are certain things that we learn from that book. So one thing they mention over here is that now, because of the capitalist mindset And the demand for the meat that we have at this point, the animals are being reared in a very unnatural and unhealthy ways, and we do know that animals and land have a connection, and they grow in a cyclic way. The animals graze on the land, and the land benefits from that, and there's a cyclic things that are going on with that. But now the cycle of nature has been broken, and animals are being reared in a linear manner, meaning all of them are packed into wire cages and kept there all their productive lives, crouching or sloping wire floor. The sole purpose of their existence is supposed to be for chickens to lay eggs, and they're denied all kinds of inherited behaviors. These chickens that are just put in the cages, they're brought up in the cages. The sole purpose of this chicken is just to lay eggs and provide meat, and that's it. They are even denied their biological or inherited behavior that they have. And so much so, they cannot stretch their wings out. Indeed, the wingspan of a battery hen is 76 centimeter or thereabouts, and they don't even have that space in there to even stretch their wings. Imagine the animal cruelty that goes on just for increasing the production of the food and the production of the meat. And this author over here, he mentioned something that really caught my attention. He says, perhaps the most offensive aspect of all of this is the contempt for life, which is bred into the modern farmer. For example, in the previous times, the farmers used to have this love for the land and for the animals that he would rear, but now because of this capitalist mindset and this supply and demand kind of a thing, these farmers have lost the love of those things. Even cattle are no longer individuals but numbers in a herd. So what are the animals now? Just number. This many cows, this many chicken, this many eggs. That's what it is. Poultry flocks are not numbered in hundreds these days, but in tens of thousands. Will this contempt affect our sensibilities and eventually be extended to others of our own species? Even from the spiritual point of view, meat of such animals is unhealthy to eat. Our dietitians do not lay enough stress on the point, because, my dear sisters, we human beings are not only body, we're also soul. So when animals are being reared in that way, when they are being kept like that, when their mental and spiritual conditions are compromised like that, it will also hurt us spiritually. Even from the spiritual point of view, meat of such animals is unhealthy to eat. Our dietitians do not lay enough stress on the point, but the history of nations bear out the fact that there is a strong ethological link between the diet and character formation. This is the truth. Our many ulama have talked about that how our diets affect our character. Animals reared under unnatural and inhumane conditions become frustrated. More so, such characteristics are passed on to those who eat their meat. So this is something that we should talk about now. We should be, we should look at this. This is cruelty to animals. This is cruelty to the environment. And my dear sisters, if you look at many reports coming now, with everybody inside and not being able to go out and so much, the environment is improving. The waters is getting clear. The skies are getting clear, because, my dear sisters, Allah has given us the responsibility. He has not made us the ruler of these things. We share the earth with all these creatures. They're also the creation of the God that I'm a creation of. We need to be kind towards them. There are many hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that he mentioned in this book. I just would read few of them to you, that were that the Prophet ﷺ said. So the Prophet ﷺ once saw a man sitting on the back of his camel in a marketplace, addressing people. He said to him, "Do not use the backs of your beast as pulpits, for God has made them subject to you, so that they may take you to places you could not otherwise reach without fatigue of body." So even he was so much, so much rahmah for the animals. The Prophet once passed by a lean camel whose belly had shrunk to its back. "Fear God," he said to the owner of the camel, in these dumb animals and ride them only when they are fit to be ridden, and let them go free when it is meet that they should rest." So for example, the English is a little bit, in the translation is off. So it's saying that, these animals are not for this. Take care of them and give them rest when they need it, and use them when it is time. So be careful even with these things. So even the mental cruelty, So there is a hadith that reaches us. We went on a journey with the apostle of God, and he left us for a while. During his absence, we saw a bird called Hamara with its two young and took the young ones. The mother bird was circling above us in the air, beating its wings in grief. When the Prophet came back and said, "Who has heard the feelings of this bird by taking its young? Return them to her." So it's so much, rahmah for the animals that Prophet ﷺ has taught us about. But in the present pandemic, coronavirus, this has also revealed that the cruelty that was happening to the animals in those wet markets. So my dear sisters, if you get a chance, take a look at those documentaries, wet markets, WET wet, those markets, and just look at some of the documentaries that you will see that how the animals are being compromised over there, and their health, their wellness is being compromised over there. So it was just a tangent that we went on because we were talking about these things over here being what is meta, what is the proper slaughter of the animals, and I thought maybe it's a good segue over here to even talk about these current things over here. So now coming back to the tafsir that we were doing. So these were the four things: dead animals, meta, blood, the flesh of the swine, an animal on which the name of Allah, of name of anyone other than Allah has been taken. So now, some of the injunctions on the dead animal is that, if the animal is wounded by a gunshot before, so for example, even hunting in Islam is not allowed if it is not a necessity. So if an animal wounded by a gunshot dies by a gunshot dies before it could be slaughtered, it would be taken as an animal that died before slaughtering. So even that would be something that falls into the category of the dead animal. But some ulama are of the opinion that the common opinion that if the hunter says Bismillah over the arrow, and that arrow hits the animal, and if an animal is slaughtered, then it will not fall into. But there are these are fiqhi detail. There are many difference of opinions on that. I'm just saying this to you so in your mind that they're there, but we're not giving any a fiqhi thing over here, this is right and this is wrong. This is not the purpose of the class over here. In verse 173, meta, or the dead animal, has been declared haram in an absolute sense. So this is also, we understand that once the animal is dead, we don't use any eatable part of the animal. We don't use any eatable part of the animals. We don't use the flesh. We don't use the fat. We don't use anything from that. But what is allowed? So later on in Surah An-Nahl, verse number 80, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that yes, even from the dead animal, what is allowed is their fur, their wool, their hair, and their bones. We can use that. So even though the animal is meta, that does not fall into the category of being slaughtered in an Islamic compliant, Sharia compliant manner, you can still use the fur, the hair, the wool, the bones of that animal. But since the skin or hide of the animal carries impurities such as blood, it is forbidden unless tanned. So this is what the condition is, that if we are using the skin and the skin has these impurities, then it should be tanned, and before the tanning we cannot use it. So when tanned, it is permissible. Further clarification can be seen in many other authentic hadith, and you go into the books of fiqh, many other classifications and things are there. So whoever is interested in that topic can refer to those, and there are many ulama that we can connect with, and we can talk more about that. Okay. So some of the other things that come into injunction is what about the soap? So that's another area of disagreement, that if the soap is made up of a fat used by the animal that was not slaughtered in the Sharia compliant way, there's a difference of opinion on that. Another thing that we come across when we talk about issues is the cheese. Cheese has one of the ingredients by the name of rennet in English, I would say. Infaha in Arabic, that's what it is called. So rennet in English. So what is that? So rennet is a membrane within, what can you say? It is a mucousy membrane within the lining of a suckling animal. And the purpose of this membrane, rennet, is to curdle the milk that it gets from the mother. So sometimes this is used in making the cheese. So far, if the animal is slaughtered in the Sharia compliant way and that membrane is used from the suckling animal to create a cheese, to make it is fine. But what happens when that's it's not taken from from the animal that is slaughtered in a Sharia compliant way? So there's a many difference of opinion when it comes to that, inshallah. And you can send the questions, and we can forward the questions to our shuyukh over here, and they can talk more about this, inshallah. Okay. So the blood. The next thing that the ayah talks about is the blood. So the second forbidden thing in the verse is blood. The word dam is pronounced in English as meaning, the blood. But the characteristic of the blood that we are talking about over here, which later is explained in Surah Al-An'am, is masfuhan, meaning it's a flowing blood. So the blood that is haram is a flowing blood. So congenial blood, things like kidneys and spleens, are halal to eat. Yes, they have blood in them, but that blood is not flowing. It's not because the blood that is not halal, the blood that falls into the category of haram, is masfuhan, meaning it flows. Okay. So similarly, sometimes when we are cooking meat, and sometimes we see that the little blood comes out from the chicken or the meat. So usually over here it happens with the chicken. So it is fine, because that blood was, when the chicken was being done and was sold, that blood was not flowing, it was congenial, it was not of masfuhan. So that is fine if it comes out in your while you're cooking and things like that. But the blood that is clearly haram is masfuhan, the one that is flowing. So meaning kidney and spleen, which also have blood in them, but they are halal to eat. Okay. So as eating or drinking blood is forbidden, its external use is also forbidden. As buying and selling any benefit from impurities is forbidden. Okay. So this brings us to another. Let me see in your notes that what else I put over there, so we can also talk about that. Because my dear sisters, when I'm making notes, it is going in a different direction over here. Okay. I don't think I put anything in your notes that I did not talk about over here. Okay. So, and now the third thing that we're going to talk about is the swine. So ayah number, yes. So ayah number is still, we are doing ayah numbers 172 and 173 again. We are still on that. We're still going into detail about all of this. So now the third thing that we are talking about is that the swine is forbidden. I think there's no explanation needed. All Muslims know in great detail about that. The third forbidden thing in this verse is the flesh of the swine. It will be noted that it is the flesh of swine which has been mentioned here as unlawful. Imam al-Qurtubi explained this by saying that the aim here is not to restrict or particularize flesh as such. In fact, all parts of the swines, the bones, the skin, the hair, everything. When it comes to swine, every part, the bones, the skin, everything, eatable, non-eatable, all that is forbidden. And no matter how the way it is slaughtered, it is never halal. So that's clearly haram. Okay. The fourth category that over here is that ma uhilla bihi li ghayrillah, that it has been slaughtered in the name of other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There are many practices around the world that people do that. There are people of other religion who do that, and sometimes when people are ignorant of Islam too, many parts of the world you will even see Muslims who do not know better. They might slaughter animals in the names of their different people that they follow. So all of that falls into this category over here. It was asked from Aisha radiyallahu anha. So once it was asked to her that and this hadith is noted by Imam Yahya ibn Yahya, who was a teacher of Imam Muslim. And towards the end of the hadith, the words come, O Ummul Mu'mineen, some of our foster relatives are non-Arabs and they have one or the other festival going for them all the time. On these festivals, they send us gifts. Should we eat them or should we not? Thereupon, Sayyida Aisha radiallahu anha said, do not eat what has been slaughtered for that day, but you can eat from their fruits and trees. So this clearly tells us that anything slaughtered, no matter how it is slaughtered, that is slaughtered not in the name of someone else besides Allah, is not halal to eat. There are 4 things that we discussed over here, but the 2 things that we also talked about that are not falls into the ordering of slaughter are the fish and the locust. So the thing from the water is not mentioned over here. So there is a saying of the Prophet ﷺ, its water it's pure and its dead are permissible. So what about, so it was asked about him about the oceans and the water game. So in the hadith is mentioned, and this is in your notes, the Sahih, the Masnad, Al-Muwatta and the Sunan recorded the Prophet Mohammed saying about the sea, its water is pure and its dead are permissible. So I think this becomes very clear. If you have any questions, please post on that, and inshallah towards the end of the tafsir we will go into the detail about talking to them. Okay. So then we go further about, what are the exceptions to the rule. So this was the rule. So now what is the exception to that? Okay. So another thing that I will just touch upon over here is that what about some of the cures and the medicine that are made from the things that are not halal. So there are many injunctions, and inshallah our ulama can talk more about the fiqhi side of these things. But yes, as a general rule is, in case of necessity, in case of saving lives, it is allowed. So now we can talk about what are some of the injunctions which are in situations of compulsion. So first of all, let's look at فَمَنِ الطُّرَّ غَيْرَ بَاغٍ وَلَا عَادٍ. So muttar according to Islamic terminology or Shari terminology is the word muttar is applied to a person whose life is in danger. Now exception is being told. Now these 4 things are haram, but if a person is in a condition of life endangerment, his life is in danger, if he does not eat, he will die for them, then it is that two things. If he's not doing 2 things, he's allowed to make use of these haram things. Number first, the aim should be to save life and not to enjoy eating. Meaning, over here I put it in but if one is forced by necessity without willful obedience, meaning he's not enjoying it, nor transgression, meaning he's not using it beyond his needs. So 2 things. Firstly, the aim should be to save life and not to enjoy eating. Secondly, he must eat only as much as would serve to save his life. Eating to fill up one's stomach or eating much more than one needs remain prohibited even in those times. And my dear sisters, do note that in the ayah Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says La isma ilayhi, meaning there is a world of difference between making something halal and saying that there is no sin. So meaning, if I just want to put it in words, by doing so it makes a point that is what is haram remains haram as it is, and using it is nothing but sin. However, the muttar, the compelled one, has been forgiven this sin. So Islam does not, even in those conditions, the ayah does not use the word halal, it uses the word la ithma alayhi, meaning it remains haram and use of it is a sin, but in those times for a muttar, for a person in dire condition, that sin is taken away, that sin is forgiven. So there is a world of difference in making something halal and just removing the sin of it. It is very, very different over here. So when it comes to adjournal conditions, I'm not going into the fiqh part of it, I'm not going into the details and peculiarities of that, I'm just giving you an overall general thing. When it comes to the medicine that are made out of these things which are not halal, so then the following injunctions, following 5 conditions. There may be a state of extreme necessity, that is one's life be in danger. Another lawful medicine does not work or is not available. It should be normally certain that the disease will be cured by such medicine, enjoying the use of the medicine should not be the aim. It should not be used any more than it is needed. So this is a journal injunctions that you can keep in your mind. But yes, there are many exceptions to the rule. There are many fiqhi details that go into it, and we can go into more detail and send the questions to our ulama to answer that for a particular condition that applies to a particular person. Okay, now, so the conclusions of all of that are verses number 172 and 173, that all the detail that we talked about, the details given help us find out what we should do about modern medicine that originate mostly from those parts of the world where the halal slaughtering of the animals is not practiced, and what can we do in dire needs when we are in a place, in a situation, in a condition when it's a life-threatening conditions and the food is needed, and without eating the food a person can die. So these ayahs help us to understand that. There are much more details to it. There are many exceptions to it. There are many fiqhi details that go and apply to certain people upon certain conditions that they have. We are not talking about any of that, and for that we have to refer to our ulama to give us better answers to particular questions over here. Okay. Now the ayahs number 174 to 176. Let's go into that. So then the ayah finishes, the previous ayah, Inna Allah ghafurur rahim, truly Allah is often forgiving and most merciful. Allah is often forgiving and most merciful. Now moving on to verses number 174 to 176, and what is so. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Inna allazina yaqtumuna ma anzalallahu. So verily those who conceal what Allah has revealed of the book and get out of it a small price, they eat nothing into their bellies but fire. And Allah will not speak to them in doomsday, nor will He purify them. And for them there is a painful punishment. They are those who have bought the wrong way at the price of the right path, and punishment at the price of pardon, wealth and endurance on their part against the fire. All that is because Allah revealed the book with the truth, and those who have disgraced or disagreed about the book are far out in schism, like meaning in shiqaq. So in the previous verses, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was talking about the tangible things, tangible things that were made haram and halal, and over here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about the intangible things. These things are not like you can see or touch or but these are intangible things. These are our deeds. So mentioned in the earlier verses were unlawful things which are tangible. Now the verses that follow take up the intangible deeds that have been made unlawful. These are evil deeds, inner and outer. For instance, and many ulama have said, Wahidi especially, that who talks about what is the asbabun nuzul. So he says that this particular verse came as a result of what the Jewish ulama were doing in that time, is that they would take small prices from people and they would change the message of the book for them to fit their desires. This was especially what was the practice, and it is said that the Yahud ulama of those time, or the people of those time, as we know, that they have been waiting for the Prophet Mohammed to come, and they would tell the Arabs that he is coming. But when he finally came and he was not from among them, they started to refute him or refuse to follow him. And many times when people would come to them and ask them that is he the one that your books talk about, they would change the message in the book, so people would not follow Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And many other things that are said about from our ulama. He says, for instance, religious scholars among the Jews were addicted to giving out false verdicts in favor of people who bribed them. They would go to the limits of distorting the verses of Torah to suit the desire of their client. In this, there is a warning given to the ulama, and then now the journal, the warning that is given in there. This is a warning given to the ulama, the religious scholars of the community of the last of the prophets, that they should keep away from such practices and never fall short in disclosing the true injunctions of Allah for any material reason or vested interest of their own. And then, if we go into the more detail of the verse, we can see that the people who concealed the book and they earned through that, they are filling their bellies with nothing but fire. And over here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that, how will they, how is it that they are, they are buying the punishment with and not the pardon. This is the price of their deed, that they are going to get the punishment and not the pardon. And how will they, and what an endurance on their part against the fire. Like, what are they really doing? Are they not thinking? So in the previous verses, by 172 to 173, we were talking about the tangible things that were haram. But in ayahs number 174 to 176, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about intangible things that should not be done, that are haram, which is the first one of them is concealing the truth and using it to earn the world and making it to fit the desires of the people. So let me check in your note at the same time what we put over there, so we can see if there's something that we needed to talk about. Okay, let's see. There's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. He said, those who eat or drink in golden or silver plates are filling their stomachs with the fire of Jahannam. Another hadith that I mentioned in this was, Okay, that was, I think, only hadith that I put over there, and you can look it up into your notes. Now, a very famous verse of Surah Al-Baqarah is coming up, which we call also the Ayatul Bir, ayah number 177. Now, before we go into this verse and we understand this verse, my dear sisters, let me again, say what I said in the beginning. From this verse onwards till the end of Surah Al-Baqarah, everything that we will go through will be an explanation of the bir. What is bir? What the righteous actions, the obedience, inward and outward. So from this point on, this is the ayah of bir, till the end of Surah Al-Baqarah, all we will talk about is what is the explanation of bir. What is bir? What is the righteous action? What does it mean? And also with this verse, one of the other passages that has come to an end is that in the beginning, Surah Al-Baqarah started with Hudal lil Muttaqeen. And in the end of this verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that these are the muttaqoon. So all that we discussed so far, this is what the muttaqi is all about. Who are the muttaqoon? With this verse, that passage comes to an end, that the hudalil muttaqeen, and these are the muttaqoon. And from this verse, we also start now what is the meaning of bir and what does it entail. So now many injunctions will come into that. So before we get into this verse and explanation of this verse, just understand a couple of points. Number one point that we need to understand over here is the supreme doctrinal principle. The one of the fundamental principle of Islam is that the way to perfection and salvation does not lie in the observing any particular form of prayer or in observing any restrictions in the matter of food or drink. So it is not about the outwards. It is about the outward and inwards. I think we talked about it in our last class too, that one of the issues that has been plaguing the Muslim Ummah is that we have been very much associated, or we have become very much attached to the outer forms of the religion. And we have completely, or to a large extent, have distance from the inner form of the religion. Like, meaning, these are the action. What is the objective of it? Is the objective of the prayer just to ruku and sujood? No. Aqimus salata li zikri. Why do we fast? Just for the sake of it? No. La'allakum tattaqun. Why do we pay zakat? Just to fulfill a duty? No. To overcome the love of this world. My dear sisters, just think about it. The zakat part that is fard upon us, 2.5% of the annual savings. So the question can be, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who has given us, can He not give the other people that we are supposed to give zakat to? They are not dependent upon us. Zakat is for us so we can overcome the love of what Allah has given us, and also realize what we are giving is from what Allah has given us. Does not belong to us. And same is with the Hajj. Why do we perform Hajj? Just to fulfill a duty once in a lifetime? No. It is that, but it is also, Hajj is a journey of sabr. And sabr is that which will make a person a better person, right? So if my teacher always used to say that, look at the land which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen for this deen to arise from. That land itself represents sabr. Look at the animal of that land. It represents sabr. The camel goes without water and food for how many days? Look at the tree of this land. The tree, it goes without food and water for so many days. So the sabr, which is that what makes a mu'min, what makes a Muslim. So one of the fundamental principles of Islam is that the salvation or the perfection does not lie in observing any particular form or any particular thing in the matters of food and drink. We are following the form that we follow because it's the command of Allah. That's it. We are following the halal and haram. Why? Because these are the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. On the other hand, perfection is attainable only through sincere devotion to God, purity of mind, and a life of righteous actions. This is how the conviction, this is how the perfection in the deen is reached. The outer forms are the form that we are taught by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They are important. This is why this is the way of the Prophet ﷺ. He has shown us to do it like that, and we will do it like that. But this is not the only thing. The outer form of the religion is not everything. That's not the objective. The outer form and the inner spirit together. Okay. So then, the religious misconception which prevailed universally at the advent of the Quran. This was the misconception when the Quran was sent down, and this is again, we have reached a point in the civilization that this again is a problem, was that the religion was identical with rituals and the externalia of Sharia. That was happening. So we have seen, the piety was, don't eat this animal, eat this animal. Don't eat this in this way. Don't do that and do this. So this was the entire, but this is not the religion is. Religion is not made up of rituals and externalia of Sharia or canon law. And that salvation and perfection dependent upon their observance. That was not it. Yes, form is there. It is important. It is the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has shown us how to do it. But it is the inner spirit that is the most important part of it. Okay, so but the Quran says that the religion is in reality is devotion to God and righteous activity, and that the outward observance of the Sharia are also there to promote this purpose. So the outward forms of the Sharia, outward form of the Salah, the fasting, everything are there to promote this inner purpose that needs to be reached by that. So now we go into this verse, لَيْسَ الْبِرَّ أَن تَوَلُّوا وُجُوهُكُمْ قِبَلَ الْمَشْرِقِ وَالْمَغْرِبِ. So Wahidi, the one who talks about the Asbabun Nuzul, says that this question was asked to Prophet ﷺ when the Tahweel of Qibla happened, that what about the people who prayed in the other directions, and it was said to them that this is not the case, this is not the way, that which direction, but the piety is there. Similarly, within the people of that time, the Jews and the Christians also started questioning that why are Muslims, changing their direction like that, and this was one of the Asbabun Nuzul of this. So we're going to go into this. So again, do remember from this point onwards, the readers will find details of this comprehensive attribute of bir. So now from verses number 177 up till until the last, what we will understand is the comprehensive detail about what is bir, what is righteousness. So my dear sisters, do understand what is bir. Bir is obedience of Allah with sincere love. Similarly, this word birrul walidain, right? So if you understand that a little bit, the way we love our children and the way we love our parents is a little bit different, right? The loving our children, we also have this, personal kind of thing that it makes us, happy. We look forward to what they will be in the future for us, things like that. Parents, on the other hand, we do it out of as a duty, right? But this duty has to be done with sincere love. This obedience has to be done with sincere love. So, this over here is that, it's obedience of Allah with sincere love. Not just doing it for the sake of it, but doing it out of sincere love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, therefore being righteous inward and outward, and how this is done from this point on. This explanation of this bir will be. So, and it says many injunctions will come under that. How can we obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with sincere love? The outward forms of that and the inwards of these actions will be talked about in the coming chapters. So some of the topics that will come up will be qisas, or equal retaliation. Will is a very important topic in these days, especially in the environment of present pandemic. People are asking a lot of questions about creating wills and how should they do it, what is the fiqh of that. And my dear sisters, because we live in the Western countries, we have this added responsibility of creating these wills, because the law of over here, the law of the land is not the law of is different. So all of us should create a will, and we should make it clear that what it is that we want, and it is important. So it's definitely very, very important that we should start looking into this at this point especially, and leave our wills, and inshallah everything will be fine and okay. Don't panic or be worried about anything. Inshallah everything happens with the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but we should know about these things. If the Quran has talked about it, there must be some wisdom behind it. Our ulama are also posting that it's a good time to make your wills. We should be doing that. And inshallah from the platform of Epic Masjid, we are also planning to have a great big workshops regarding that in present times, how can we make it and what to do, all of that. So other things that are coming up in this explanation of bir, which is the obedience of Allah with sincere love, is fasting. The topics of jihad will come, hajj will come, spending in the path of Allah, infaq. We'll also talk about haid or menstruation. We'll also talk about oaths, divorce, idda, marriage, infaq, and all of these things are going to come up in this idea, in this topic of bir that will be coming up. Now, let's go in your notes first and see what we have over there. So, the translation is, it is not bir that you turn. No, I have more water, it's fine. Yeah. Sister Afreen is asking me, do I need coffee? Okay. It is not bir that you turn your faces towards east and or west, but bir is the one who believes in Allah, the last day, the angels, the book, the prophets, and gives his wealth in spite of love for it, to the kinsfolk, to the orphans, and to the masakeen, the poor, and to the wayfarer, and to those who ask, and to eat, and to set servants free, perform as-salah, and give the zakah, and who fulfill their covenant when they make it, and who are patient in extreme poverty and ailment, and at the time of fighting, during the battles. Such are the people of the truth, and they are al-muttaqun, the pious. So, my dear sister, let me check the time that we are on time over here. Okay, we still have a few more minutes that we can go into. So, laysal birra an tawallu wujuhakum. So, first of all, my dear sisters, do understand over here that again, what have we talked about? It's not the form, it's actually the spirit. The form is important, but the spirit is the objective of that form that we should understand of that. So, first of all, when it says, so a little bit of background of the surah, of the ayah, when Baytullah, the house of Allah at Makkah, was made the Qibla of the Muslims in place of Baitul Maqdis, the Jews and the Christians and the Mushrikeen, who were much too eager to find fault with Islam and Muslims, were stirred. And they started coming up with all sorts of objections against Islam and the Holy Prophet, and the detailed answers of now has been given. So my dear sisters, the first thing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says is bir is the faith. The first thing that comes up is the articles of the faith. The bir is to believe in the articles of the faith. And then the second thing is Allah and His people. So the second thing that we see over here in dealing is the dealing with the people, giving to our kinsfolk, giving to the people, taking care of them. This is the second thing. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the morals of these people. Who are these people? These are sabireen. And then the final statement is that who follow all these injunctions are the true muttaqun. So this is the verse. So first of all, the first thing is over here, that you turned your faces towards East, but to believe in Allah. My dear sisters, what is the belief in Allah? If I ask you this question, what is the belief in Allah? We believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is one. And we talked about in great detail about the monotheism in action, like living Tawheed, how we say it. And if you go to the last lecture that we recorded, we went into great detail about living monotheism, living Tawheed. You can refer back to it. Secondly, my dear sister, just to go over it very quickly, everything good is from Allah, everything evil is from Allah, and the only refuge from all of that is within Allah. And I don't have to say it, everybody's saying it, and they're saying it in a much better way than I can say over here. Today's time is teaching us more than anything else, and also everything good is from Allah, every evil is from Allah, all the refuge is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. My success is listening to the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All laws of this world are the laws of Allah. My dear sister, the physical laws are the laws of Allah. You cannot walk on the water. This is the law of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This world belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is the creator of this world. He is the creator of me. He is the creator of all the creation. And believing in Him, listening to His commands is where I will find success. And moving away from that is where I will find failures. Now, second thing is believing in Allah. Now, the second thing is the last day. So, my dear sisters, if you look at the day, the ayyam or the yawm in the terminology of the Quran, there are days of this world where we live. Each and every one of us is a bundle of years. Some of us is a bundle of 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, Allah knows. But each one of us has been given a limited time in this world. And in that time that we are here is what we have to spend in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, being obedient to Him. And my dear sisters, yes, in today's time, people are very worried about dying from this virus. My dear sisters, dying was already known. We all know this. We all know that we have to die one way or the other. It's not that how we die, that's not important, because death is a great equalizer. It equalizes everything. When the death comes, everything is equalized. Everything is finished for everyone, no matter which faith, no matter which race, no matter what. It is an equalizer. It equalizes everything. The real truth is how you have lived. That's the real thing. That's not an equalizer. The equalizer is the death. It finishes everything for everyone. It's very precise. It comes on in time. But the real thing is how you have lived. What were the morals? What were the standards? What did you pursue in life? How did you live? How did you benefit people? That's the real thing. So let's think more about this. But this cannot happen, my dear sisters. We cannot live a good life until death becomes a reality in our thinking. It is only when we believe in death, we believe that this is the time, it will come and we will die, it will equalize everything. Only then we can live a life that is productive. Only then we can live a life that, that really means something. Maulana Rumi has said, when we die, when the people die, we don't want them to look for us in our tombs, in our graves. We want them to look for us in their hearts. So am I living a life like that? That people will find me in their hearts? Will I be one of them? So my dear sisters, this life is going to end anyways. It was known from the beginning which virus or which disease. Yes, we have to deal with these things. I'm not talking about the medical aspects. Of course, we have to social distance. We have to observe everything. This is a world of cause and effect. We have to follow these things. But what I'm talking about is spiritual sense. We all knew about it. The death is going to come. But believing, until we believe in the last day, until we believe in the akhirah, we will not be able to live a life that is meaningful and that means something. So my dear sisters, the last day, the angels, why do we need to believe in angels? All this world is being run by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is running this world, and He's appointed angels to do different things. And angels are the ones who used to bring wahi to the prophets, and belief in them is when people do not believe in angels, they come up with different theories of how the world is being run, and that's another topic. But belief in angels, the book, the revelations from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes, my dear sisters, we have knowledge that we gain through our sensory things, our five senses that we have. But if the people are only living through five senses, they're compromising their lives. This is what they are. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, who are the mu'min? Yuminuna bil ghaib. They believe in transcendence. And my dear sisters, in today's time, this belief is the one that is going to keep us on our feet, that is going to make us strong, that is going to make us find ways, because we just don't believe in the life that is just constructed by five senses. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about the believer, they are the ones who believe in the unseen. And my dear sisters, I would say that in every calamity that comes, there is a hikmah, there is a barakah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we cannot even imagine. But we do know some things that, through this Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings this to us, my dear sisters. It is the belief in the unseen that is making us strong. And I was reading a book about the history of the Black Plague. So Black Plague came into the Muslim world, and it came into the Europe around 1349, I think. It was there for 5 years. It came, it went, it came, it went, it came, and that was it. And the people who used to get it. And the book talks about that how the people in Europe and how they were responding to that, and how the people in the Middle East and how they were responding to that. And the response was very different. And we do know belief in the unseen, that because of our religion and because of our deen has given us this. So, and it's a great history to go into, inshallah. If ever we get a chance, we will get into that. There is a documentary about that on, I think it is called Timeline Documentaries. Don't watch it if you have, if you're not very tough, especially in these times. But it's a good thing to watch if you want to watch it. It's called Timeline Documentaries. They make historical documentaries about different things. Okay, so now over here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says the prophets and gives, and the prophets, belief in the prophets, the book, they're all together. Tawheed, Risala, Akhirah. With the Risala comes the angels too, and with the Akhirah, all these things are connected. So the first part of Bir, what is Bir? Iman, right? So now, and gives his wealth. Now, belief in Allah, and then, what is our relationship with his creation? Now, give his wealth in spite of love for it. My dear sister, this is one thing that we should understand. Now, our ulama have said this particle meanings over here that, let's see, going into over here. Okay. Ala hubbihi. Now, this has been explained by our ulama in three ways. He says, if we take this pronoun, ala hubbihi, so first of all, it may refer toward the pronoun, hubbihi may refer to Allah, for example, in which case it would mean that in spending wealth, one should not be guided by material motives or the desire to show off, but doing it for the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Second is refer to the wealth, in which case it should mean that while spending in the way of Allah, only that part of wealth and possession which one loves will be deserving of marriage. Now, my dear sisters, in today's time, and Abdullah ibn Masud has said that it means that spending in the path of Allah when one is healthy, when one is desiring this world, when one is still, have needs, and then he gives. My dear sisters, this applies to us today more than anything else. Now, in the time, a lot of talk is about, economic recession. People might not be able to stay in their jobs. They might not be getting paid. Maybe the months that will follow up, there will be a lot of, economic recession, and, people will face financial difficulties, things like that. But my dear sisters, at this point, there are so many people that need financial help. And yes, we might think that, in the coming times, I might need this and I might not spend, but this is the time, my dear sisters. Ala hubbihi, that we are desiring it. There is a fear of poverty, there is a fear of maybe I will get into, but this is the time to give, my dear sisters. This is what Bir is all about. So, my dear sisters, this is a good opportunity for me to also remind all of you. You can also see the logo on the screen, my dear sisters. Our Masjid needs a lot of help at this point. So please, these things that you see every day, that there is a TV going on and we are all able to connect. My dear sisters, yes, there is distancing, but we are trying our best that this distancing is just a physical distancing and not a social one. We are trying to connect and stay connected in every possible way we can. But my dear sister, these efforts take money. So my dear sisters, I will like to appeal to you over here is that please donate to your masjid, please donate to our epic masjid, because they're trying, of all the activities that are going on over here requires money. And you must have seen also the emails that are coming about providing the neighbors with the food and other utilities. My dear sisters, this is the time to do dawah. This is the time, my dear sisters, and we can be a part of this. So, ala hubbihi, remember that Ibn Masud has said, this is like spending in the path of Allah when one is desiring it, when one is having this, this fear of poverty, this fear of, I might run out of it. This is the time to give, my dear sisters. And give why? Because we believe in Allah. We believe that it is Allah who is the one who has given us, and this is the time to give. And my dear sisters, I was looking at many things about financial crisis. I don't want to scare you or anything. But one industry that seems to be booming at this point is the gun industry, and people are kind of thinking that it is better to buy one, keep it at home for your safety. So all these things, but inshallah also give for the sake of Allah. This is the time to give ala hubbihi. So this is the time when we might think that this might is coming up, but this is the time to give, my dear sisters. I was reading an article even, some of the people, there's a person, I was reading about him, somebody posted a video that this person, maybe he's somewhere in Pakistan, I think, this was the video, I think was from there. He bought a whole lot of soaps, a whole car, big, van full of soaps, and he's now, giving the soap bars to the people who are living in those, poverty-struck areas where they don't have even the opportunity to have a soap to wash their hands. And as we've seen the reports that most of this virus is being spread through hands, shaking hands, touching your face, things like that. So just imagine that, in this time, this person, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given him the tawfiq to do something like that. That and your people who are from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, they all know the slums over there. They all know how the people are living over there. Imagine those people. Imagine those people, sanitizers, soaps. They have not even heard of these things. Many of them. That's the truth. And imagine this person who thought about this, that this is the time to gain this. Ala hubbihi. He had the whole car filled. But my dear sisters, we over here have this opportunity. My dear sisters, all these services are provided to us, and by these means, and inshallah, please pay to your masajid so we can be part of that, donating to our neighbors project. You can be part of these dawah activities that are going on at this point, my dear sisters. So please do think about, paying, helping the masjid at this time, inshallah. So in spite of love for it, ala hubbihi, to the kinsfolk. So now over here, let me go to your notes, because I do think that I put some hadith over here that I wanted to go over with you guys. Okay, let's see, going down, if also you see into, okay. So there's a hadith that I put over here. It is recorded in the Sahihain that Abu Huraira narrated that the Prophet ﷺ said, the best charity is when you give it away while still healthy and thrifty, hoping to get rich and fearing poverty. So this is the hadith in Sahihain, my dear sisters. Inshallah, today we have gone through that. Let's go into action and let's do that. So, and then the other thing is wazil qurba, meaning man's relatives who have more rights than anyone else for one's charity. There is also a hadith that Prophet that we know from our beloved Prophet Mohammed sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Sadaqah given to the poor is charity, while the sadaqah given to the relatives is both sadaqah and sila, meaning to nurture relationships, for they are the most deserving of you and your kindness and charity. Allah has commanded kindness to the relatives in many places in the Quran. Wal yatama, so who are the yatim? So the yatim, that I also put the definitions in your notes, you can go through that. The orphans are children who have none to look after them, having lost their fathers while they are still young, weak and unable to find their own sustenance since they have not reached the age of work and adolescence. My dear sisters, just imagine in today's times, where are these people? So I was very happy with this project that is going on in our community, that they are taking the foods and the supplies to helping the neighbors and the people who are in need. Awal masakin, and who is the miskin? Is he the one who comes to you and begs? No. Over here, the miskin is the one who does not have enough food, clothing, or he has no dwelling. So the miskin should be granted the provisions to sustain him enough so that he can acquire his needs. In the Sahihain, it is recorded that Abu Huraira said that Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "The miskin is not the person who roams around and whose need is met by 1 or 2 dates or 1 or 2 bites. Rather, the miskin is he who does not have what is sufficient and to whom the people do not pay attention and thus do not give him from the charity." So my dear sisters, this ayah of birr, this opportunity to do the righteous action with the sincere love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we have it now. So let's do it while we can, inshallah. Ibn Sabil, and the wayfarer is the needy traveler who runs out of money and should thus be granted whatever amount that helps him to get back to his land. So it can be anyone. It can even be a person who might have, possessions and anything, but he's in a situation where he does not have access to it, and he's in a place where he needs help. Such is the case with whoever intends to go on a permissible journey. He is given what he needs for his journey and back. The guests are included in this category. Ali bin Abu Talha reported that Ibn Abbas said, "Wayfarer is the guest who is hosted by Muslims." Furthermore, Mujahid, Sa'id ibn Jubair, Ibn Jafar al-Bakir, al-Hasan, Qatada, and all of that have said similarly. Was-sa'ilin, now who are the sa'il? So we talked about the miskin, now who is the sa'il? And those who ask. So there is a differentiation between a person who is miskin, he is not roaming around asking, but they have needs, and because they don't ask, they are overlooked. So my dear sisters, services like that are good to help them out, inshallah. Refers to those who beg people and are thus wasailin are those refer to those who beg people and are thus given a part of the zakah and general charity. Wafir riqab, and to set the servants free. My dear sisters, in those times there people had slaves, but even in our times there are not people who we can call slaves as such, but the slavery in that sense, my dear sister, wafir riqab are also people that are under debt. And there are many other things that we can talk about. There is an organization online that does this kind of work. It's called Not for Sale. You can go look into it. It's a very scary thing to look at though. But yes, to be knowledgeable, we should talk about these things too. And these organizations help people who are taken away, who are and then if you look at the stadium, I think that was being built in one of the Middle Eastern countries, and how the people were there from India, Pakistan and Bangladesh, and how they were kept away from the main living town, and they would live in those apartments, maybe 7 to 10 people in one small room, and the entire conditions of those people, and they're under debt and things like that. So there are many things that we can talk about over here. So these are the servants who seek to free themselves but cannot find enough money to buy their freedom. People under debt still come under this. We will mention several of these categories and types under another tafsir of the Quran as we go. I put this in your notes over here. Now over here, in order to do the above, these are the things that we need to be done, because aqimus salah wa atuz zakah. This is our deen, my dear sister. Aqimus salah is having connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wa atuz zakah, having a connection with His creation, especially the people, right? Aqimus salah wa atuz zakah. So this is the two connections that we have, and this is where it all starts. Because my dear sisters, in order to do the righteous deeds, first of all, we need the tawfiq of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We only do this because He gives us a tawfiq to do so. We don't do anything on our own. So we need that connection. And we cannot fulfill all of this unless and until we have that connection. We cannot give money, even we are fearful of going into financial distress ourselves, if we don't have a strong connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wa aqamus salah. So perform as-salah mean those who pray on time and give the prayer its due right. So the literal meaning of the word is that pray on time, meaning within the timings of the prayer that each prayer has, and doing it the best way you can, making the right wudu, following it the right way, and all the fiqh of the salah that you guys know. But more importantly, the connection that comes with it, the inner connection. Aqimus salata li dhikri, the bowing, the prostration, and the necessary attention. Thank you, Afreen, Jazakallah khair. Okay. And give the prayers due right, the bowing, the prostration, and the necessary attention and humbleness required by Allah. Wa'atu zakah, meaning, and give zakah means the required charity due to one's money, and have stated, that is stated, and I think zakah is something that we all know about, 2.5% on your annual savings, and that is what is meant over here. But and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and who fulfill their covenant when they make it. Now what does this mean over here? So my dear sisters, if you look at in our social lives, we make many covenants, like marriage is one of the covenants that we make. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, who fulfill their covenant when they make it. So marriage is one of them. Buying and selling, we have many covenants in that regard, in many different kinds. So this also falls under there. Okay, let me see that if I am missing something over here. Okay, I think I covered all the points, because my dear sisters, when you guys are not in front of me and we are not having that kind of back and forth, and I'm just and I have all this information, because many times in the class when you guys ask questions, if I'm forgetting anything, it comes to my mind, but you guys are not here and I am missing you over here. So inshallah, so this is why I have to keep checking that my notes that I've created, that I'm not missing out anything. But if I miss out, my dear sisters, do ask, and you can always go back to it. And who fulfill the covenant when they make it, and my dear sisters, what is the opposite of that? What is the opposite of not fulfilling the covenants? The opposite of that is hypocrisy. There's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. He said, the signs of the hypocrite are 3. If he speaks, he lies. If he promises, he breaks his promise. And if he is entrusted, he breaches the trust. So my dear sisters, fulfilling that is a sign of iman, is a sign of bir, and not fulfilling the covenants that we make with people are the signs of hypocrisy. In another version of the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, if he speaks, he lies. If he vows, he breaks his vow. And if he disputes, he is lewd. Like he goes, way beyond. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and who are patient in extreme poverty and ailment and the time of fighting, meaning during the time of meekness and ailment. My dear sisters, was sabirin fil ba'sa wad darra wa hayn al bas. My dear sisters, to all that, which will be the moral quality, the strongest quality of these people will be sabr. And my dear sisters, in our class, we have talked many times about sabr. We talked about active sabr, we talked about passive sabr, we talked about all of that. And you can refer to your notes that we have. But my dear sisters, sabr is the only way a person becomes a better person. There's no other way. Quran is not here. Many times people say, okay, the main purpose of the Quran is to make us a good person, a better person. So sometimes people might feel, I'm not enjoying it, or these things are very difficult to follow. Why should we do it? Like, why things have to be? But the thing is that Quran is not here to make us have pleasure in that sense. Quran is here to make us a better person and have happiness through being a better person. And for that, sabr is needed. To do your own tarbiyah, to get away from the wrong things, to get indulged into the right things. Sabr. Everything needs sabr. Without the sabr, Islam cannot be practiced. The basic aspect of a mu'min to practice this deen is sabr. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, of all of that, to do all of the above, to be a person of bir, to be a person of righteous actions with love and sincerity, one needs sabr. My dear sisters, sabr. To perform the righteous deeds, we have to have sabr, meaning we have to, control our nafs and have sabr with our nafs and go and go and pray and fulfill the rights of the prayer. We need to have sabr on ma'asi, meaning there is something wrong that my nafs wants to do and I have the full ability to do it, but I will stop myself from doing it. Sabr on ma'asi, that is also required. And then sabr when any calamity comes, that all of us are going through these days, my dear sisters. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes one thing away, there's a good book, Hikams of Ibn Atta. Sometimes you should read that, the wisdoms of Ibn Atta. Many great things that he says. So one thing that he says is, and you must have heard it from your elders, we all heard it growing up, is when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala closes one doors, many doors open. So my dear sisters, yes, we are facing this trial. Yes, the masajid are closed. Yes, the meeting and greeting is closed. Yes, but Allah has opened for us the doors of sabr. And that's an amazing door to enter into for all of us. Allah has given us the opportunity to make sabr. And one amazing thing, I was reading his book. There's a book and somebody compiled, they translated some of his hikams into English. The book is named Journey to God. And they were saying that sometimes when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala distance you from people, He's opening the door for you to come closer to Him. Sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala distances you from people. It happens, it is happening in our days in these ways. Sometimes people face, people, move away from that people, from that person, things like that happen. But in our times, Allah has opened for us the doors to be closer to Him. Maybe we are away from people physically, but we can be closer to Him. Allah has opened us the door for us to have sabr. Imagine that. And my dear sisters, the people, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect all of us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless all of us with health. People who are even passing away with this disease, Allah has opened for them the door to be shaheed. My dear sisters, it is not, how is the things are, but it is the end. Because my dear sister, this life is going to end anyways. But imagine through these doors that are open for us these days, the door of sabr, the door of getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all of those doors that can, how much benefit we will be having in the akhirah with these doors. So sabr is the only way. وَالصَّابِرِينَ فِي الْبَأْسَاءِ وَالضَّرَّاءِ وَحِينَ الْبَأْسِ, and who are patient in extreme poverty, ailment, and at the time of fighting. So, okay, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is calling the patient here in a form of praise because of the importance of patience in these circumstances and the suffering and difficulties that accompany them, and Allah knows best. My dear sisters, there's a circle of concern and there is a circle of action. One time I was reading an article and this author was talking about this. It says, many of us live in a circle of concern, that we are concerned. Why is this? Why is that? Why is this happening this? How will this end? When will this end? All of that. And then more practical people live in the circle of action. Yes, this is happening, not why, but what for. Their thinking is not why is this like that. Their thinking is what for. They're more productive in their lives. They will think, okay, this is the way it is, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to ask us about the circumstances that He put us in. He will ask us, how did you respond? Yes, and all of us do not have the same capacity. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ask each and every one of us according to our own capacity. This is His rahmah. But my dear sisters, through that, Allah has opened for us the door of sabr, the door of spending in His path, the door of supporting the people who are in need at that point. My dear sisters, let's embrace it, inshallah. So Allah is calling the patient here in a form of praise because of the importance of patience in these circumstances and the suffering and difficulties that accompany them. And Allah knows best. It is He whom help is sought from, and upon Him we rely. The ulaika allazina, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, ulaika allazina saddaqu. Ulaika allazina sadaqu. Such are the people of the truth, means whoever acquires these qualities, these are truthful in their faith. My dear sisters, I want you to do this today. Why don't you share verse number 177 with the members in your family today at dinner time, or when you're having tea together, or with your children? Why don't share that? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ulaika allazina sadaqu. These are the people of the truth, means whoever acquire these qualities, these are truthful in their faith. This is because they have achieved faith in the heart and realized it in deed. They have achieved faith in their heart, and they have realized it in deed and upon the tongue, so they are the truthful. And it says wa ulaika humul muttaqun. Remember how we started? Hudal lil muttaqin, and now we have come to the end, ulaika humul muttaqun. All that we studied in the middle, ulaika humul muttaqun, my dear sisters. Just imagine that. Okay, so we're getting close to our times. Okay, so the next verses are verses number 178 and 179. They talk about, O you who believe, al-qisas is prescribed for you in case of murder, the free for the free, the slave for the slave, and the female for the female. But if the killer is forgiven by the brother of the killed, then it should be sought in a good manner and paid to him respectfully. This is an alleviation and a mercy from your Lord. So after this, whoever transgresses the limits, he shall have a painful torment. So another thing that now is coming over here as we are going through the injunctions of, the peculiarities, the fundamental principles are explained. Now some of the related issues. First of all, we talked about the food, and now we're talking about the qisas. My dear sisters, in Islam, qisas, the law of equality, the law that, if for the slave, a man for the man, and all of that is, this is because if you look at the laws that Islam talks about, most of them, laws to save the life, laws to save the property, and what are some of the laws that we can fight our inner desires. So these three things are like overarching. So first of all, in these verses, we'll talk about the laws of saving the life. And the next the verses will talk about wasiyah, which we talk about next time, and then after that, we go ahead with other things. But over here, we are talking about the laws of saving the life. So what happened was, two tribes of the Jews were fighting with one another, Banu Nadir and Banu Qurayza. So Banu Nadir overtook Banu Qurayza, and they came up with these rules that if a person from Banu Nadir is killed, if from Banu Qurayza is killed, for that, the person from Banu Nadir will not be killed, but this amount of dates will be given in qisas. So if a person from Banu Qurayza, Banu Nadir is killed, a woman from Banu Nadir is killed, then a man from Banu Qurayza. So this was not equal. So when the Islam came in, these things were set aright, that because these were not. And my dear sisters, just imagine, it was not that if one person has killed, for that another innocent person has to be killed. This is not fair. And Islam put it in the right way, that only the killer will be killed. It will be the killer. O you who believe, in case of murder, the free for the free, the slave for the slave, and female for the female. But if the killer is forgiven, so it is the killer that will be the one who will go, and he will be the one who will be, but the law of equality will be there to serve that. So there are many injunctions to that, there are many details to it, and we will not go into many details of that. We will just go through that. So just let me get into a little bit of details from that. Over here is that the word qisas means likeness. In usage, it denotes even retaliation or to return like for like. In Islamic juristic terminology, qisas means the equal retaliation of an aggression committed against the body of a person. This retaliation is allowed only with the condition that the principle of like for like is strictly observed. This has been explained more clearly later in the verse 194 of the surah. So when we come to the verse 194 of the surah, then inshallah we will go into more details of that. So over here I'm just going to give you an overview of that. The principle of even retaliation is applied exclusively in cases of a homicide, in cases of murder, when it is intentional. Sometimes people will be killed because out of a mistake. We are not talking about that over here. Qisas is when it was intentional. Okay. Secondly, the killer is killed in even retaliation, free man for a free man, slave for a slave, and female. The mention of free man for a free man and female for a female in this verse refers to a specific event in the background, meaning this is not like a law. I told you the story of Banu Nadir and Banu Qurayza. This was especially talking about that particular thing that these Jewish people were doing. It was talking about them over there. Okay, and another thing over here that Islam brought that is more important to think about is that, but if the killer is forgiven by the brother of the killed, so this is not talking about the blood money. That was not before over there. So in the Jewish religion and the Christian religion, the blood money was not there. But Islam came up with this, that the killer can be forgiven, and if the brothers or the relatives of the people of the person who is killed, if they are willing to forgive, the killer is forgiven, and then he has to give the blood money. So my dear sisters, people might ask, why is Islam being lenient on the punishment? My dear sisters, it is not the punishment that makes people a better person. It is actually the belief in Allah that makes them a better person. And even if you look at the industry, the jail industry, I have to say that, even if you look at in our times, people are just kept into jails for years, right? And who sustains them? The tax money, right? So in Islam, if you delay the justice, even that is injustice. Inshallah, we'll talk about great detail in that when we come to verse number 194, but this was something that was given. This is an alleviation and mercy from your Lord. So after this, whoever transgresses the limits, he shall have a painful torment, meaning, when the blood money is being decided, make it easy for the people. And there is a saving for you in al-qisas, meaning it's a law of life. The people, if they know their life will be taken for the life they take, they will be very careful in taking the life. Nice? The law of equality in punishment, O men of understanding, that you may acquire taqwa. So my dear sisters, I'm not going to go into the next two verses about, about the will, because inshallah we plan to talk more in detail about that, and we will invite some of our ulama to talk about the workshop on will, and we will go about in the next time, inshallah. So now, inshallah, we will talk about your questions, and let's see what questions you have over here, inshallah. Okay. Okay. So the first question that is coming up is, please mention the name of the documentary. Okay. Which documentary? I think in the beginning I talked about a documentary about the wet markets. Is that what you're talking about? So there is a program by the name of 60 Minutes. If you're familiar with that, if you go to that, just type in the search 60 Minutes, maybe coronavirus or wet markets, it will come up. And you can watch that. For years this effort has been going on to eradicate the wet markets, because SARS, the previous virus, originated from that. And if you remember, there was also a virus that came from the birds, the bird flu, you remember. It also came from the same thing, that all the birds were crammed together in cages. So this virus especially, and the impact of that is bringing to light the cruelty on animals. So that is the documentary. Okay. I have a question. Can I marry my Christian friend? Please anyone answer, because I heard Muslims are allowed to marry Christians and Jews. So my dear sisters, this question, we need more detail on that. Yes, Muslim men are allowed to marry Christian women and Jewish women, but Muslim women are not allowed to marry Christian men or Jewish men, or Ahle Kitab as we say that. But I don't know what is the details of the questions. You can talk to me, you can send me a message on WhatsApp, and we can talk more in detail about that if you want. So on WhatsApp you can find me, Aminah Chowdhry, Chowdhry, and you can send me more greater detail of that. Inshallah, we can talk about that. But in general, the law is the Muslim women are not supposed to marry Jewish or Christian men. Okay. Sister Aminah said, it's not important how you die. I thought it is. We are given du'as to have a good death. Example, how we die, where we die. I thought how we die is also. Yes, in that, yes, it is important how we die, but that death depends upon the life you have lived. Maybe I should have worded it in a better way. I was just trying to make a point that death is an equalizer. It comes to everyone. And it comes whenever it comes to a person, it finishes up everything. Everything comes to a complete end. It's an equalizer for all people of every faith, every character. But the way we die will depend upon the life that we have lived. Right? So this is the point I was trying to make, but you're right. I should have maybe worded it in a better way. And yes, we are given the du'as to have a good death, and you're right about that. And we should make those du'as as much as we can to have a good akhirah. Allahumma inni as'aluka al-jannah wa a'udhu bika minan nar. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasana wa fil akhirati hasana. All of that. But the point I was trying to make is that that in order to have that kind of a death, it depends upon the life that we have lived and how much we have struggled to live a good life, inshallah. Okay. Okay, I think how you die is how you die, whether you die from a plague or in sujood, in prayer, that is up to Allah. So don't stress about it, but focus on how you live. Okay, can you please write the name of the book Aminah just mentioned? Okay, I have many books over here. Which book I mentioned?
The Wisdoms of Ibn Atta.
Yes, the Wisdoms of Ibn Atta. So that's a good book, and you know, if you maybe read it with a teacher, you will understand more of it. And our ulama usually have said that you know, how they classify knowledge, that you know what kind of a knowledge you should be doing every day, and you know, like the knowledge of fiqh, you know, we have fardul ain, so learn as much fiqh as is needed for you as in a personal basis. But some of the knowledge that you should tap into almost every day is a knowledge of wisdom and spirituality, because that helps us, you know, and that are good reminders for us. One of the books that I would recommend is Wisdoms of Ibn Atta. And you can read that. Another great personality to read the simple books that can you read is, I can maybe post some more names over there. So especially in our times, and there is a site, there is a website, sunniconnect.com. There are many books available on that in PDF for free, and you can just tap on the wisdoms, and many books on spirituality and wisdoms will come up. Maybe that book is there for free. So there are many sites now online where we can have free PDFs, and you can, you know, access those. But one of the knowledge that you should tap into every day and read about it every day, our ulama have said, is the knowledge of wisdoms and the knowledge of spirituality that really helps you get through many things, inshallah. Okay, let's see, do you have any more questions over here? Okay, that's the only questions that I see over here, inshallah. So my dear sisters, inshallah, I will see you guys next Tuesday. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. As-salatu was-salamu ala rasulihil kareem wa alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in bi rahmatika ya arhamur rahimin. O Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we surrender ourselves to you. O Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we ask you for your forgiveness. O Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, have mercy upon us. O Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, O Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, accept from us and forgive us. O Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, give us the resolve and the conviction to have sabr in these times. O Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, give us tawfiq to spend in your ways. O Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, give us the tawfiq to stay steadfast in your ways. O Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, O Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, cure the ones who are sick. O Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, give them ease. O Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, ameen bi rahmatika ya arhamar rahimin. Allahumma taqabbal minna innaka antas samiul alim wa tub alayna innaka antat tawwabur rahim. Ameen bi rahmatika ya arhamar rahimin. Jazakumullahu khairan katira, my dear sisters. I'll see you guys next Tuesday. Assalamu alaikum.